Hey, Composite Gloves here. This is the 20th video in the Master from the Ground Up tutorial series. And today we're going to conquer the unison. So, open up a new sound, and on your fourth envelope, this is for demonstration purposes, turn your attack up and your release up so that you should have a sound that sounds like this. Okay, that's what you should have. So, to get to the voicing tab, you have your tabs, and click on your voicing tab. On your voicing tab, you will see that there are a whole bunch of controls. We're just going to cover them real quick. You have voicing, and you have your maximum and your unison option. So this is basically the amount of voices that are generated, and this is how many of those voices generated you can have. So you'll notice up here there's a voices, and when you have 0 out of 16, nothing's being played. When you have 1, that's because you're playing a note. If you have 2, let me change it. There you go. And so what this means is you can have up to 16 voices maximum, meaning 16 notes can be played. But if you were to turn this down to 1, only 1 note can be played. So if you were to hit another note while holding down your note, so I'm going to hit a note, hold it down and push a new note, and then hold that note down and hit another note. You'll notice that it's forced to the new pitch because I can only have one voice, and I can only hit one. I can only have one voice, and I can only hit one maximum. But if I turn it up to 4, I can hit 4 notes. But as soon as I go past 4, I am again forced to leave a note behind, as you can see. So that's how that works. And so if you have 16, you can hit 16 notes. But if you have, say, 8, you would think you'd only be able to hit 2 notes, right? Like, because you only have 8 voices. But it is not so. You can actually hit more notes. The reason is it starts just peeling unison voices off of the one you have. Like if you have 8 for 2 notes, it'll just take some of those 8, and now you don't have 8 for the 2 notes, you have like 6 or 7 or something, and it's giving some of those voices to the extra notes. So when you have 1 on and you're hitting 1 note, your gain tends to go up because it's in phase, this new voice, and that's what happens. But when you start changing the pitch and stuff, it starts changing the phase, and then your sound doesn't get so loud, which is why my master knob is sort of down right now, because if you have a big unison, it tends to get pretty loud as that unison, the gain adds up pretty quick with all the extra voices being added. So this is a great way, by the way, for making pads. So polyphonic is you can hit more than 1 note at a time. This is a global setting, or not global, but it affects your entire patch. So I guess it is sort of global. So yeah, you can hit more than 1 note at a time. Basically, you can play chords. All right, but if you were to go to monophonic, you can only hit 1 note at a time. And if you go to monorate or monorotate, whatever, the other monophonic mode, you can still only hit 1 note at a time, but you notice it behaves quite a bit differently. That is because, and I think they actually have these definitions a little mixed up I think they've got them backwards in the manual. That is because the mono rate kills all previous voices immediately, just dead, consider them gone. So if you had like 4 voices or 5, and you hit a new note, you will notice that it cuts that voice off completely. Let's make it like this. And you hear that click? That click's not supposed to be there according to the manual, but it is. And if you were to do that on the monophone, it actually it overlaps very slightly, and it fades out the previous voice really quickly. So you don't get the clicks like this one. So that is how that works. So yeah, it's just a matter of how you fade out your stuff. Now, let's talk about the triggers. So the triggers have to do with the way the messages are sent to these guys to behave. So the always trigger means that these guys always start in the same level and position according to the envelope that's dictating them to change or how to behave. So it always restarts at the beginning. Legato is a different story. Legato takes the previous option and it builds on the level that was already there. See? Versus always. And the same with Legato Triller, except with Legato Triller, this one is every time you hit a note, it starts, even though the note is faded out, it takes off at the level that one was at. This one actually keeps the previous note's data, and you can trill between them, thus Legato Triller. Triller is when you switch between two notes really fast, so like this. You can't do that in this mode. When you hit a second note, no dice. When you hit a second note, you could still change. You can't go back to the note that you're holding down though. So that's what Legato Triller is. And you notice that since these two only allow you to play one note because of the glide, this polyphonic Legato Triller is not even an option. The reason Legato is because it could still take the information and build on the level that was already there. You see, it behaves a little funky though because of how voices are interpreted and stuff. Also, the glide control for the time spent is right here, and you have equal and rate. And I'll talk about this when I cover the oscillator tab, but just so you know, in case you're looking for that. Okay, Unison Spread. Now we're going to go back to our typical sine wave. So just start a new patch, new sound. Oh, one other thing real quick on the voices max. If you take this down to 1, and you can only play one note. If you take this down to 1, check this out. So other patches, if you're going through your presets, they're all at 1, 1 now. All of them. That is because this is a global setting because it's CPU intensive. And I can't remember it's 4 or 3, but one of those makes... on your Unison, if you change because of the way the algorithm is, I think 4, maybe it might be 3 or 5. I don't even know. One of them is easier on your processing than the other. But if you turn your voices back up, all of a sudden you have things that, there's one, that their Unison comes back. So just keep that in mind when you load this up, that if you change this, it's going to change for everything, not just the one thing. Let's go back to a new sound. And now we're going to cover the Unison pitch spread. So we're going to turn this down, and we're going to select a sine wave. And you remember how much I love log and linear. Well, we're going to change this. We're going to zoom in really close, and this is now a linear graph. So everything is graphed linearly. And we are going to talk about this here pitch cutoff. We're going to put 2 voices. So it'll generate 2 voices, and we're going to turn it on. You have to turn these things on. They're off by default. And you'll notice that we have 2 boxes here. This is your starting point. This is your end point. So if we were to change this, this is essentially the pitch of our voice. So our voice would immediately start 1 semitone. It would start a half step above our original tone. This starts at the same. These go from -12 because there's 12 steps in an octave, and 12 steps up, and then there's 0. And you also can make finer changes here if you want finer adjustments or to limit the range of this slider. You can also add modulation sources here, so you can grab your envelopes and put them here, or some of your macro controls and put them there. And you can change this guy as the endpoint too. So as you move it up, the pitch will change from being perfectly in tune to a half step above our original pitch, and you'll actually see them come apart. So right now they're the same. And slowly change until the second voice is a whole spread apart. So if you have if you wanted to generate 8 voices, it'll spread it apart. And if you go a little bit, it'll make it sound like really nice and lush. Or not so. Let's go to by the way, a sine wave is not the best idea for this example. Let's go to a saw wave, because a saw wave has a lot more harmonics. So when it generates another voice, there's a lot more interesting harmonics happening. So there you have it. See, there's your pad. The sine wave, yeah, not the best idea. Maybe if we did it like played a chord or something, but now we're going to go back to our sine wave to show you a really quick property. So here's our sine wave. And you'll see the center and chord, which is why I switched this to linear, okay? I'm going to zoom in even more. Okay, so if I were to move up, our voices start getting spread out. And this is like what algorithm it uses to detune when you move away from the center pitch, detune your sound. So this detunes it linearly, meaning they're all moving apart at an equal space. So if we go up to something high, like 12, it's easier to see. So it's moving an octave apart. And they're all moving apart at an equal space. Sort of. Center is not like totally linear, but the way chord works is it moves apart in multiples of the note you've selected. So it'll stay relatively in tune. And you might think, oh, that sounds an awful lot like the previous one. Well, you got to remember, we've selected some bizarro value to multiply it by. And if we change it to center, it'll sound different. So that's what's going on. That's because it's moving in multiples of the fundamental. So if you were to play a chord versus so that's what's happening. It's just moving according to the fundamental. Yes, very unusual. You'll also notice that original tone is no longer there. It disappears. But on chord, since it uses that as the multiple as a reference, the chord is still there. Stays right there. No longer there. There. So, yeah, just keep that in mind. So chord may be what you're looking for in tune things. Centered can be really useful for creating those lush pad type sounds. On a saw, it depends on your overtone harmonic series. And move it down to 1 because we don't want to detune it that much. If you ever listen to like those big dance pads that sound really epic, it's usually a bunch of layered voices with detune slightly going on. And they usually go up in decimal values because it's more specific. So that's why those decimals are so valuable. So we're going to turn that off and we're going to change this back to 1. And now we're going to go to our wavetable position. Turn this to 4 and turn this guy on. And what this does is it scrolls. Let's choose a wavetable. Let's go to square to saw. So on one end, without this on, we have this wonderful saw. And on the other end, we have this wonderful square. And as we morph between them by turning this on, it's out of percentage value. And again, you can set the beginning and ending percentage. That basically tells the knob where to be at for the different voices. And so we have 4 voices, so this knob should be spread out 4 different places as we move it up. So if we select maybe a different wavetable, let's go with that one. And you can see you can also modulate this using a source, and that's all it does. It just selects different wavetable positions so that you can create a more lush sound. It's called Unison Spread because you're spreading away from the unison, making it sound bigger. And then you have pan position, which essentially is the exact same thing as your pan knob, except that except for that, well, now your unison is being sent into a stereo field, and all the way at full is just a regular stereo field. And then if you were to hit more than one note, and again, the gain adds up because of the whole phase thing. And if you go down to mono, this is mono. It's right in the middle. And then this is the inverted. So what was on the right is now on the left, and what was on the left is now on the right. And you can also move this around. So you can create some interesting stereo movement as you're playing around with that. And that is what the voicing tab does. Largely dictates the behavior of your synth, but also has some important timbral options that allow you to create some sounds that would be interesting to hear. And that is all I have to say about that. If I got anything wrong, let me know in the comments, and drop your favorite patch that uses Unison or a link to it or whatever, your song that has it. And if you like these videos, subscribe and have a blessed day.